Chase Daniel changed his position on Shedeur Sanders this week, completely, and I want to explain why that matters more than it might seem on the surface, because this isn't just one analyst updating a take. It's a signal about where the broader football conversation is moving and why it's moving there right now. Daniel was one of the voices drawing real criticism not long ago for how he was framing Shedeur's performance, finding angles that deflected from the obvious, pointing at receiver routes when the real conversation was about circumstances, talking around the evidence in ways that felt like someone working backward from a conclusion they'd already decided on. And now he's sitting in front of a microphone saying Shedeur Sanders gives Cleveland the best chance to win in 2026. That's not a slight adjustment, that's a full reversal, and from a former NFL quarterback who was actively skeptical. When that kind of turn happens, the honest question isn't just what he said, it's what changed his read. Because the answer to that question tells you more about this situation than the position flip itself. Let me give you the substance of Daniel's reasoning rather than just the headline, because the actual argument he made deserves engagement. He talked about Monken's system, the pace, the multiple formations, the emphasis on creating mismatches through personnel deployment and motion design rather than through raw talent winning individual matchups. And he made a point that I think is genuinely underappreciated in most of the quarterback competition coverage. Installing this offense from scratch with a young quarterback who has no competing habits to unlearn is a schematic advantage, not merely an acceptable limitation. Watson has spent years developing reads, processing cues, and building instincts in multiple different offensive environments. Every one of those years created muscle memory, automatic responses to defensive looks that are specific to the schemes he's run, not to the scheme Monken is installing. Shedeur has no such conflict. He can absorb this system clean, build his reads and his timing and his anticipation patterns around Monken's specific design from day one, without the cognitive friction of old habits pulling against new requirements. In a system as detailed and specific as what Monken runs, that's not a minor footnote. It's a genuine competitive advantage. What I find personally satisfying about this moment, and I want to be honest about that, is the specific play that originally got Daniel in trouble. He was breaking down a missed throw, trying to distribute responsibility between Shedeur and the receiver, and the response from people who had actually been watching closely was immediate and pointed. They noted the offensive line situation, they noted the absence of first-team reps. They noted the systematic way the circumstances around Shedeur's performance were being set aside in favor of surface-level analysis that served a narrative someone had apparently already committed to. And that criticism was entirely fair, because here's what was being glossed over. Shedeur went 3-4 last season without consistent first-team preparation. He was the only Browns quarterback to throw for over 400 yards in a game. He made the Pro Bowl. Not in ideal conditions, not with full developmental support, in circumstances specifically constructed, whether by design or negligence, to make it difficult for him to succeed. The results he produced in that environment deserve more than a dismissive analysis that ignores everything surrounding them. Tony Gonzalez made the same turn that Daniel just made. That's the detail that upgrades this from one analyst reconsidering a take to something that looks like a genuine media pattern. When multiple credible football voices independently arrive at the same revised conclusion over a compressed period of time, you have to ask what they're all responding to. Because opinion shifts at this scale and this speed don't happen from one piece of information. They happen when evidence accumulates past the point where the original framing can be honestly maintained. The voluntary workout where Shedeur was the only quarterback in the building, the captain designation from Monken, which is not a casual organizational gesture, the locker room belief that RG3 reported, and the name statements from Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward that gave it independent confirmation. The rep distribution signals from a coaching staff that explicitly said reps will not be divided equally. Each of those pieces has been arriving consistently, all pointing the same direction, over enough time that the media resistance to acknowledging what they add up to has become increasingly difficult to justify with a straight face. Here's the specific point I want to dwell on, because I think it's the most important analytical distinction in this entire conversation. There's a difference, a significant one, between a competition that is genuinely equal and a competition where the organizational direction is clear, but the formal announcement hasn't been made. The diplomatic open competition language that Cleveland continues to use publicly serves specific purposes. It protects the organizational relationship with Watson during a period when his contractual situation has no resolution. It gives the coaching staff the professional flexibility to adjust if the evidence demands it, and it avoids the media circus that accompanies a formal starter designation before the offseason program has produced meaningful competitive evidence. All of that is real organizational logic. But it shouldn't be confused with genuine ambiguity about where this is heading. The evidence isn't ambiguous, the rep distribution isn't equal, the captain designation wasn't distributed across 3 quarterbacks. The voluntary workout wasn't attended by 3 quarterbacks. None of the actual indicators of organizational direction are pointing toward genuine uncertainty about the outcome. So what does maintaining the open competition language cost? That's the question I think Cleveland needs to ask honestly, because hesitation at the quarterback position has a price that this franchise has paid many times before. The argument for naming Shedeur the starter isn't that it eliminates evaluation or removes accountability. You can designate a starter and still hold every player to Monken's daily standards. You can designate a starter and still adjust if the evidence produced by training camp demands it. What the designation provides that the open competition framing cannot provide is organizational clarity that cascades through the entire preparation process. The offensive linemen building chemistry with their quarterback. The receivers developing timing with the guy who's going to be under center in September. The defensive staff calibrating their practice intensity around the starter's development rather than around a nominally equal competition. All of that preparation is more effective when the organization communicates clearly who it is investing in, and all of it is less effective when every group is trying to calibrate around an outcome nobody will formally acknowledge. 42. That's the number I keep coming back to. 42 different players have started games at quarterback for the Cleveland Browns since the franchise returned in 1999. That number is not just a fact, it's the accumulated history of a franchise that has asked its fan base to invest in one quarterback answer after another and watched each of those answers eventually come apart. Every starting quarterback who arrived with genuine hope and left with genuine disappointment. Every season that began with a quarterback who was supposed to be different and ended with the reset. Watson was supposed to be the one that finally ended the cycle, and the Watson chapter became one of the most expensive and painful entries in that long, exhausting list. When RG3 reports that the locker room believes it can win with Shedeur specifically, not Watson, not Gabriel, Shedeur, that claim carries emotional weight in Cleveland that people on the outside can't fully feel, because it's not just a football statement. It's the possibility of finally reaching the end of a chapter that has defined what it means to be a Browns fan for more than 2 decades. Let me spend a moment on Travis Hunter, because his story runs parallel to Shedeur's in a way that I think deserves real acknowledgement. These players shared a locker room at Colorado under DeShaun Sanders. They went through the circus of that program together. The maximum visibility, the constant scrutiny, the specific kind of external noise that was specifically calibrated to get under their skin and disrupt their focus. And now, watching Hunter's recovery footage from his knee surgery, seeing the intensity he's bringing to a rehabilitation that's on an aggressive 6-month timeline, the competitive character that made him extraordinary at Colorado is fully visible. His response to the report suggesting he'd primarily play cornerback this season, asking directly who told them that, wasn't a quote, it was a declaration. He intends to remain who he is, a genuine two-way contributor, regardless of whatever organizational plan might be quietly under construction. That posture, that refusal to accept a reduced version of himself without resistance, is the same DNA that made him historically compelling at Colorado. It's the same DNA Shedeur has been demonstrating in Cleveland. These aren't coincidences. They're the products of an environment that either builds competitive character or breaks it, and both of these players came through it intact. What we're watching potentially develop across the 2026 season is the full professional emergence of 2 players who absorbed everything the pre-draft skepticism threw at them and responded by working harder rather than smaller. Hunter's recovery and what he produces in Jacksonville. Shedeur's first full professional season as the designated starter with the developmental infrastructure he's been denied until now, both of them coming out of an experience that was designed for maximum pressure and producing players who don't flinch under pressure. That parallel story is going to get told across 17 games, and I think it's going to significantly revise the conversation around both of them by the time the season ends. Back to Cleveland and the thing I want to leave with about what Chase Daniel's reversal actually represents in the larger picture. The media resistance to fully committing to Shedeur as the answer in Cleveland was never really about the football evidence. The football evidence has been pointing in his direction since the end of last season, since the 3-4 record without first-team reps, since the 400-yard games, since the Pro Bowl that the people who actually watched him play decided he deserved. The resistance was about the comfort of familiar doubt, about the reluctance to fully endorse a player who came out of an unconventional situation and a draft process and a pre-draft media cycle that generated so much noise that the signal underneath it got buried. Daniel catching up to the evidence isn't the headline. The headline is that the evidence was always there. consistent and accumulating, waiting for honest evaluation to catch up to what it was showing. The Cleveland Browns have a quarterback. The building knows it, the locker room knows it, the coaching staff knows it, and the media, slowly, visibly, one reversal at a time, is in the process of knowing it too. What happens across the 2026 season is going to be the proof that was waiting to be delivered.